DJDUBL.
It's DJDUBL here, and today I am joined by Mr. Fire in the booth himself.
What's going on, brother? You good?
Someone I've been waiting to sit down with for a very long time, Akala.
Nah, yes, fam. Big up, big up.
Welcome to the show, man.
No, thank you very much.
How are you?
Yeah, brother, I can't complain. I feel good.
In a good space right now?
Yeah, very good space. Yeah, looking forward to the tour. Looking forward to the rest of the year.
Yeah. Can you remember the first time, like the time when you fell in love with hip hop?
Yeah, I was much younger than most people tend to fall in love with music because my dad ran a sound system and my stepdad was also a DJ and an MC. Both of them more Jamaican dancehall reggae style than hip hop, but they both played a certain amount of Public Enemy and NWA. So I was about 6 when Fear of a Black Planet came out and when Straight Outta Compton came out. And I remember learning both. My parents were fine with me learning Public Enemy. NWA, there was a bit more wavy about it. And I remember learning that I'm the type of good that's built to last. With me, I put my foot in your head. But I was like 6. Yeah. So obviously it was a bit problematic. But from then, what I loved about hip hop was you're talking, essentially. So the ability to communicate so much so quickly. I remember Fight the Power. I must have been, again, 7 or 8 when that video came out. And even that early, so me and my sister used to write songs and perform them in the garden every year to my mum. It was like on her birthday. And so very, very early, my stepdad was a stage manager of the Hackney Empire Theatre. So first time I performed on stage, I was probably 5. I was dancing, not rapping. But yeah, I fell in love with music in general, but with hip hop probably before I turned 10.
Wow. That's that's it.
Early. I was inducted early.
Yeah. This I hope this comes across the right way. So like I see you as a pioneer. You're one of the guys that really shaped what we have now from early. Who are your role models in hip hop, like as a rapper?
I think that lots of different people that people might even be surprised by. You know, I loved DMX and Mobb Deep, and what I always tried to do as a quote unquote conscious MC was bring the aggression and the realness and the swagger that a Jay-Z or a DMX or a Mobb Deep might have to the conscious world. One of the criticisms people often had of quote unquote conscious music is, yeah, it's good, but it's not as much swag, there's not as much aggression, not as much vibe. I felt like, listen, you can have that I'll punch you in the face energy while having a good message. I'm not saying don't defend yourself. I'm saying we don't have to rap about destroying our community and dissing women and selling drugs. That's part of what goes on. Yeah. For me, when it becomes 70% of rappers are pretending they murder people, it just becomes fake. There ain't that much man getting murdered. Like, it should be like 5-10% of the rappers.
I think your percentage is generous. I think it's way more than that, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Like,
it's like 90% of man, and I'm just like, well, more than anything, this is boring, dude. Yeah. Not everyone can do that well. Someone like DMX did the kind of evil, demonic, mad guy in the hood well. People forget that he was a great artist first. Yeah. And DMX could have taken that same ability and rapped about blue socks. And somehow he'd have made it work. And I think that's what people often forget. So my inspirations were very wide-ranging, from the X's and the Mobb Deeps to Tribe Called Quest and Outkast. That's one of the things I felt about 90s hip-hop that I feel like we lost. Until Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole kind of came on the scene recently, they felt that was a long period of mainstream hip-hop where there was no balance. Where everything was bitches and bikinis and
almost
guns and
the
drugs.
Whole 2000s, isn't it?
Like it's like that whole period, there weren't one really lyrical, questioning, challenging MC selling millions of records. And then Cole and Kendrick came and it feels like they were a return to a bit more balance. Whereas in our era, at least when I was growing up, maybe you're a little bit younger than me, I'm 32, right? When I was growing up, there felt like, you had Outkast selling millions of records. You had Lauryn Hill selling millions of records. You had Mos Def selling millions of records. You had such a balance that it was okay to have the I'll shoot you in the face shit. Because there was only like 10%.
There was a balance there.
Right. And I've not got a problem with that. That's the mentality in some places and in some environments. But I do have a problem when it's fake and it's a disproportionate representation of the Black American, or in this case, Black British ghetto experience. Not everyone's out murdering people. In fact, 99% of the time. Even the dudes who are killing people, how do they behave when they go to their grand's house?
Yeah.
You know, do you know what I mean? Like, give me a human representation. Like, I know, I'm talking about my own brethren who was a very naughty boy, unfortunately. He's been deported now. You know, he came here when he was 2 from Nigeria. He was one of my oldest. He was a very, very naughty boy. when I was in his yard, his mum still used to slap him. And I'm talking at these points, in our ends, he was a bad boy. Like,
right, yeah.
He'd done a load, and his mum would still slap him in the side of his head and make him sweep the floor.
Wow.
There's not the whole representation of, yes, I might be out on the roads doing badness, but I'm still a human being, and there's a side of me that, I feel like that's what Pac and other people did very well, where it was thug life, but then it was Dear Mama. It was the contradiction of humans are not one thing. A person that does bad things is not necessarily all bad. And I think hip hop managed to communicate that very well at a point, and it ceased doing that, and it just became a bit kind of video game for me.
Yeah. Did you ever have an American accent in the early times?
Yes.
Because without a UK rapper to kind of lead the way.
1,000,000%.
You did, yeah.
When I was 12. So I did grow out of it way before anyone heard me.
Right.
My sister, to be fair to her, so she was a singer and a garage MC even back then. Well, it was more jungle, actually.
Yeah, so Miss Dynamite for anyone that doesn't know.
Yes, for anyone who doesn't know, right? So I was about 12, 13, and I was writing my lyrics, and I used to rap exactly like the RZA. I used to slur my words and everything.
Right, okay.
He was my favourite MC at the time.
So accent and everything.
Everything. And she was like, fam, you're English. Like, you were born in England. You're not from New York. Allow it. And I was like, for real. But you're right, there wasn't mainstream representation of UK hip hop.
Yeah.
You'd had people like London Posse, to be fair to them, who rapped in their own accent. You had Skinny Man and others. But yeah, it was hard to find our own voice. But yeah, eventually I did. And I think grime was a big part of that as well. Like the kind of convergence of grime and hip hop, where the grime artists started making hip hop records and the hip hop artists started making grime. I was one of the first, where people perceive me as a hip hop artist. But on my first album, Shakespeare's more like a grime song or Roll With Us remix or whatever. I never saw this big division. I thought it's rapping at 140, like it's not reinventing the wheel. But I feel like the identity that grime put and the emergence of them two is impossible now. Any English rapper who rapped with an American accent would just be seen as an idiot.
Shot down straight away
people
these
would
days.
be like, what are you
But
doing?
I mean, there was a few. In, I'd say, your early days, there was... I can't name them, to be honest, but I remember hearing
and I'm
ones
not
where
knocking them, because at that point we hadn't really found our own voice.
that was the style.
That was the style. And it's complicated, because if you rap, like if you're a British Jamaican, for example, and you rap in a Jamaican accent, I wouldn't consider that fake, because that's your identity and your origin. Like patois is more... In fact, the scholars now in Jamaica are arguing that Jamaican is a separate language.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not a patois of English.
It's not slang.
Yeah, they are right. And actually, if you look at the structure of it and some of the words and all of that, it has so much West African input that they're saying it's a different language. So that I would see differently. Whereas rapping in America, well, we're not American and we have no connection to America other than we like their music. But when the West Coast dudes came out in America, they didn't rap like they was from New York. And one of the reasons people respected them is because they put their own stamp on hip hop. Yeah. And I think that's what we have to do, and that's what now we are doing. And it's for the first time really the respect of UK hip hop, the understanding of experience. Oh, England isn't all people, sipping tea and speaking posh. Actually, some shit goes down. I think the States, for the first time, really has an eye on here in a way they haven't had before.
We're celebrating 10 years of Akala now.
Indeed, yes.
I think congratulations is in order first off.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
That's a big feat.
Yes, it is.
In such a young genre, really. UK hip hop, UK grime. So it's 10 years. Obviously, it's not. I don't see it as 10 years of Akala.
Yes.
It's 10 years since the album.
Yeah, correct.
It's because you were doing, obviously, you had the mixtape before, and you obviously were...
13 years since my first video.
13 years
So I shot the video for Banger for the Streets in December 2003. So I was like 19 at that point.
So that was your first thing that you 19. Put into the public domain as Akala,
that was the first thing I put into the public domain. Then I shot the video for War in April of 2004. Released a mixtape that summer. That was my first release. Then I released an EP called the Hold Your Head Up EP on vinyl. And then I released the album in 2006. It's not a rumour. So it's 10 years since there. 10 years
definitely was not a rumour, because I'm going strong now, man. What's the most important thing you've learned in the last 10 years? Now, I'll bring this down to the most important thing you've learned in the music industry, because I know there's going to be a fountain of knowledge.
No, I think that it really matters. And what do I mean by that? I mean that even if you don't always notice it, craft, attention to detail, integrity, really matters. And in terms of your longevity as an artist, if you're willing to do the work and go out and earn your supporters one by one on the road, yeah, you might not become Rihanna, but that's not everyone's aim. But you will be in a position where, like I always say to people, I haven't had a radio playlist since Shakespeare. My next London show is at Coco. It's sold out. Life is fine.
So, sorry, you haven't been playlisted on
I've not had
daytime radio since Shakespeare. So that is 10 years.
Yeah, there's 11 because the single came out in 2005.
Right.
But yet here we are. You know, I'm playing the same venues that rappers do get on the radio regularly,
and selling them out. We'll just add.
So the point I'm making is, if you're willing to go out and do the work. Now, let's be clear. For the first 5 years, I did shows and I made no money. Not every artist is willing to do that. Where you're going out on the road and sometimes it's even costing you money to perform. But when you're willing to make that sacrifice and that investment, I could not put music out for 5 years and I still could tour every year. Because, in fact, this year I'm only putting out a greatest hits album. It's not new material, right? Yet we've been able to do 27 shows and tour Australia and everything else. If you're willing to put that level of integrity in, it will take you longer, but it's certain. Because it's not dependent on the radio, it's not dependent on marketing spend, it's not dependent on posters, it's not dependent on visibility. You've earned it. And especially in this day of social media, you can just sell to your fans directly. So when I say it matters, I'm saying that integrity, mixes of records, attention to detail, bodies of work, that level of integrity really in your art really counts for something. D'Angelo, to give a bigger example, right? When was before Black Messiah, he put an album out 14 years ago, whatever the hell it was. He announced his Brixton Academy show. He sold out 3 dates at Brixton Academy.
Quickly as well.
Right, he's never been a pop star. He's never really been on the radio. Like, he was on the radio a little bit when he done the Naked video 15 years ago. Yeah, that's 18,000 tickets, fam. So what is it about D'Angelo's music? We could say the same about Lauryn Hill or Erykah Badu or loads of other artists. Erykah Badu's last, I looked this up to make this point. Her last UK chart single was in 1997.
Right.
She could still do Brixton Academy now, today. So what is it about those people's style of music that enables them to actually grow with time, even when they're not visible? And so, yeah, it matters. I would say to young artists, it really, really matters that you put out good, solid bodies of work.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. So the album you mentioned, it was the greatest hits.
If you can call it that. I mean, they're not technically hits, but you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. I would call it the best of, as opposed to greatest hits, because the way you selected the track. So it's 3 songs from each album, right?
Correct, and we let them support.
Fan picked,
1,000,000%,
with some extras thrown in as well.
So the extras are digital,
right?
So you can get the whole thing digitally, or you can get the vinyl and get the 4 extras when you buy the vinyl.
So the version of "Carried Away" that's on the new album is a new version, new mix.
With a new singer on it. I just 10 years later, I listened back and I was like, you should have sung that, fam. You could have got a singer to do it and it would have been better. Comedy Tragedy is a new mix. Yeah. Because for years, that mix just pissed me off. The sample we sampled was a low bitrate sample. Right. And it wouldn't sit right. So we've done a new beat and a new mix of that. Absolute Power we've mixed again and just added a bit of live instrumentation. The rest is the same. So there's a chance to revisit a couple of songs as well. But Giants is the one that I'm really feeling at the moment. He linked up with Kabaka Pyramid as well. I love that, brother, man. That's a great collaboration, man. He's obviously like very, very big, very lyrical and very conscious Jamaican artist as well. He's brilliant. When did you meet him? You know what's mad? We hadn't met when we did the song, you know. And this is the difference. I will say this, right? There's an interesting stereotype about Jamaica. Set of stereotypes that actually have no relevance to actual Jamaicans. In Britain, this idea of the kind of lazy, slightly criminal, always late. I've done 2 documentaries in Jamaica now, right? Yeah. I interviewed Beanie Man. He was 15 minutes early for the interview. Yeah. Nah, he didn't know it was me interviewing him like, oh, Akala, so I've got to be early. Right. He's just that professional. I interviewed half of the reggae legends. I interviewed Bob Andy. I interviewed Sly and Robbie. Not a single one of them was late. So it couldn't be a coincidence that I interviewed literally 50 artists across the 2 documentaries. I emailed Kabaka, or his manager. We spoke on the Friday about what I wanted and blah, blah, blah. He was like, you know what? Me, I go to America right now. He's in the middle of an American tour, right? He explained all this to me. He's like, it's cool. I'm going to take my mic with me and I'll record the verse on tour. I had the verse on the Tuesday. We spoke on the Friday. And it ain't no dead out verse. It's a bad verse. My point is, what people don't understand about why Jamaican music has had such a massive global impact is the level of work rate, the level of artistry, how serious people take it. It's one of the only ways to make a decent living and to get off the island, unfortunately, and to see the world. So you won't even make it off the island if you ain't got that level of excellence. So someone like Kabaka, even when I watched his show last week at Outlook, his band, tight as hell, like ridiculous. The sound engineers, if you go to a dance in Jamaica, top quality sound engineers. If anyone who's been to a dance site, it will tell you. So there's a level of discipline towards music that any successful Jamaican artist has, even the ones that we consider a bit more ghetto, even a Vibes Cartel, even a Movado, and there's an attitude towards music, and Kabaka's reflective of that. And so it was a great experience. I finally met him when he came here.
Right.
And we shot a video together, which is coming out this week, actually, 4 Giants. Then we both performed at Outlook. And he's just someone I know more than music. We're going to be brethren now, just because I really respect him as a human being. And we just connected on a level that was kind of bigger than music. He's just someone that I've really got a lot of respect for as a human being, who lives what he's talking about. And he's part of a great new wave of conscious reggae artists coming out of Jamaica that I'm really feeling.
It's a very exciting time with reggae music. The artists, the type of music they're making as well is incredible. Now, I wanted to ask you a couple things. We're obviously a little bit pushed for time now. So I wanted to ask you a couple things. Firstly, dead or alive, who would you most like to work with?
Whoa. I think number 1 is very clear, Bob Marley. Number 2 is probably Jimi Hendrix.
Okay.
Those would be the 2... In fact, more than even me working with them, could you imagine a joint album with Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix? I don't even know what that would have sounded like. But for me, yeah, they're the 2 artists that if I could work with anyone who's ever lived, it would be them.
Bob and Jimi.
Bob and Jimi.
Not bad choices, man. I was with Immortal Technique not too long ago, and he hinted that there was like a collaboration in the pipeline somewhere. So I wanted to check in with you. He wouldn't tell me really much about it.
He could. The reason why he wouldn't is because he couldn't, in the sense that we've connected, we've spoke on email. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of mutual respect there. I've been loving what he's done for a very long time. We've always intended to connect. We just keep missing each other. So I've been in New York twice when he's here.
Right.
So he's here and he's like, yo, dog, where you at? And I'm like, I'm in New York, you know, fam. Or vice versa. So again, incredible MC. Again, someone that I feel that lives what they talk. With Tech, it's not just about him rapping about politics because it's cool.
No, really,
he's someone
really
who goes and does
authentic
the
guy,
work.
man.
He's someone that, you know, really cares about social justice and all of those things. And so I got a lot of respect for Tech as a man.
Yeah.
Not just as an MC. At some point it will happen, for sure. When, can't say yet.
The fans are waiting, bro.
Yeah, man.
Everyone that speaks is like, this has to happen.
You know, he's the kind of person, I don't want to email him a beat and him send me a 16.
Right, yeah, it just needs to be organic.
I feel like we need to be in a space together and craft a piece of work.
It needs to be
together.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, it will have to wait till we're both in the same space at the same time.
Absolutely. The return of Loki, probably something you've been asked about a billion times.
You know what? Funny enough, I haven't. I actually haven't.
I guess, I mean, you're friends with Loki, right?
He's my homie. Like, so it's not music.
You must speak regular outside of the music.
Yeah, like us, he comes to my house for tea regular.
Amazing. That means you've got information.
Yeah, the whole time,
man.
I knew he was coming back, right? So I obviously had to sit on that information for a while, right?
Yeah.
The whole time he's been away, I've been seeing him 2-3 times a week, except for when he was overseas for quite a while. And I think, like I said to people before, for a lot of people, it's hard to imagine that a dude was just like, yeah, things are going well. Yes, I've got this career, but I want to take some time out and study and develop as a human being.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought, what happened? Did he get kidnapped? Did he get tortured? Blah, blah, blah. There was all these conspiracy theories.
There's so many things about the government. Did the government shut him down because of what he was talking about?
He wanted some time for himself as a person.
Right.
To develop as a human being.
So he went and worked. Did he work in Palestine?
He went to Palestine for a while.
Yeah,
he was in Palestine for a while, working with young people out there. So I'm saying, again, he's a guy who believes in what he's talking about. It's not just music.
Yeah, he's living
So he
it.
might just say, I don't want to make music. I want to go and study and I want to go and work with the youth in Palestine. And I respect that. I think for a lot of people, it's hard for them to get their head around that being a celebrity isn't that important to a lot of us. Like, yeah, it's nice to make music and people to know who you are.
Part of it.
And it's a byproduct of it. But really, actually, he wanted to spend some time working with the youth overseas, and that's what he did. But yeah, he's my homie. Apart from music, he's my brethren. And a lot of people, like, one thing we always joke about with each other is people think because you talk about politics, you're always serious. Like, my man watches horror movies and he's a clown, like, and we catch bare joke. Like, people think we're just in the room like Zionism, white supremacy, classism, burn the world.
Sat there reading books together, like.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we study and we chat about politics too, but sometimes we just
got
watch
the banter
films and
levels
talk
as
shit,
well.
like, and there's banter and we catch joke. Like, you've got to live your life. You can't. Yes, the world can be a difficult place to exist, but you got to stay sane. And if all you ever talk about is what's wrong with the world, you won't stay sane, because there's a lot that's right with the world. There's a lot that's good. There's a lot of love out there. There's a lot of positive energy. And so yeah, we spend a lot of time just catching bare joke, fam.
Now, your sister, Miss Dynamite.
Yes.
I worked with her a few years ago quite a lot, and we sat down and recorded an interview, and we were talking about the possibilities of an Akala Miss Dynamite album.
Yes, go on ahead.
There you go. I'm going to put it straight over to you.
I don't think that's an impossibility. I think at some point it's probably something we will do.
Yeah.
When, who knows? It might be in another 10 years. I mean, we did a little darker, but that had loads of other features on it. But I do think,
also, that mixtape as well, like...
It was slept on,
imagine you put that mixtape out now.
Gigs was on it.
The features
Bashy
and
was
stuff.
on it. Big Nasty was on it. JME was on it. Like, Nasty Crew were on it. Roll Deep were on it. J2K. I mean, literally, it was a who's who of the next 10 years of UK.
It was well ahead of
its time. So slept on.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask if you felt that project went under the radar.
I feel like it's the most slept on... One of the most slept on things that's ever come out in. And partly it was, to be honest with you, we put it out as an independent company. If I'm honest with you, at that point, no disrespect to any of the artists, but it was difficult for me. Like, I wanted to shoot a couple of videos, which we were gonna pay for and all that. But it started to become headache, and I didn't have the experience that I have now.
You mean getting everyone coordinated?
There was a few people that were particularly difficult. I'm not gonna cuss no one. There's none of the people I just mentioned. And so it was really partly that. There wasn't the YouTube thing now. There was only Channel U back then. And I feel like a lot of even the artists that were on it must look back and think, we could have made more of this. That said, it stands there as a testament to UK hip-hop and grime, and really as a statement of the next 10 years that was to come in many ways. So I do feel like it got massively slept on. But it was still... Nole was on it.
A little darker too.
You know what? I think you're right. I think that's got to happen.
Let's do it.
I'm on it. I'm going to organise that.
Amazing. Let's talk about the fire in the booths.
Yes.
Now, I was going to ask you... No, let me ask you, actually. What 3 things would you change if you ran the country? If you were Prime Minister, what 3 things would you change?
Good question. I would change Britain's foreign policy, fundamentally. So I would, for example, if we look at the way the Foreign Office facilitates British-owned corporations exploiting other countries' minerals around the world, I would change that function. Little things that could be done. This is just the whole thing of foreign policy is one of the major things I would change. I would stop selling arms to odious regimes like Saudi Arabia. In fact, I would try and stop selling arms full stop, even though that might be a bit idealistic. That's what I would like to do. So foreign policy would be my first area of focus. In terms of the British Commonwealth, for example, the Commonwealth could focus on facilitating the relationships of British citizens who are of Jamaican or Indian or Ghanaian origin with their home territories to do productive business and to be mutually beneficial to both territories. It doesn't currently do that. It continues to really act as a way for mega British corporations to exploit those territories, when really many of us who are British citizens, it could work with us to do more productive business on the ground there. It doesn't do that. So foreign policy. Domestically, I would reduce the effect of classism. So I believe that there should be a redistribution of wealth. I believe corporations should pay proper tax. I believe the richest 1% of Britain should contribute proportionally to the economy. We're led to believe they do not. I would change, and then the third place would be the education system. I would develop an education system that was about creating, or try to, the best kinds of human beings, not the best kinds of workers. I was never offered any psychological support when I was in school. This is just one example. When my mum had cancer and I was 11 years old, and we had no food in the fridge, and things were not good, I was never offered any psychological, emotional, spiritual support.
Right.
I was taught how to do the theorem of Pythagoras. That's great, but I ain't had breakfast today, and my mum's on the sofa vomiting. What good is the fucking theorem of Pythagoras right now? So for you, so even worse situations where mum's a drug addict or whatever else. Why do schools not have school psychologists, for example? So I would look at trying to develop a school system that is about creating more emotionally balanced, holistic human beings, dealing with the reality of how many of us are living in a tough situation, even in the midst of one of the richest countries in the world. So foreign policy, classism, schooling. I'm
so glad you said about schooling, because I would definitely put you, if I was in charge of the country, I think one of the first things I'd make Akala head of education.
People like us are never going to be.
No, I'm well aware of this. It's all hypothetical, but the reason I brought it up is because I genuinely feel like this as well. Through your fire in the booths, all 4 of them, I feel like I picked up more knowledge than in 5 years in secondary school. More useful knowledge, and more, you know what I mean, stuff that I can use.
School isn't about
teaching
us to understand the world and understand the way the world really works and understand power. It's about teaching us to reproduce the society that already exists. So people are lied to consistently. Like, people are lied to about how poor people in this country got the right to vote. No one ever taught you that in school, I guarantee it. No one ever said, oh, by the way, people have to shed their blood. Even for you as a presumably dude who's not from a wealthy family, even for you as a white male in Britain, if you didn't have money, if you didn't have property, if you weren't part of the aristocracy, you had to shed your blood for basic parliamentary representation.
Yeah.
There's a thing called the Peterloo Massacre in 1819, where peaceful protesters were hacked to death. None of that is taught. So we become politically lazy because we're taught it's British values. Britain's just a... No, it's not. People had to fight, even within this country, for the basic freedoms that we have. And so school teaches us to be politically lazy, I think, in many ways. And it teaches us to be trusting of authority when we should be suspicious of authority. It teaches us to do as we're told, when actually some of the worst things in the world happen because people did as they're told. People in Nazi Germany did as they're told and then used the excuse that they were only following orders. Most of the worst things that have ever happened have happened because people followed orders, not because they disobeyed them. And school teaches us to do those things. Disobey if you think something's unjust. When I disobeyed...
At least question it.
Right.
At the very
Yet
least.
you're told, oh, you're bad, or you're, you know, kicked out of class or whatever else. So I think we should teach people critical thinking, teach people to criticize leadership. And those things, we're taught they're unpatriotic. They're the most patriotic things. Saying your country could do better is actually doing your country a service. Yeah, if you just blindly say Britain's great, people say, oh, you're a patriot. No, you're not. We're not great. We do a lot of shit things, and that's okay. Because every country does a lot of shit things. Pretending you don't is not helpful. Anyway, I'm sure.
That's right, they're nudging and waving and waving.
So
I want to ask one very last thing before they burst in here and drag me out.
No worries.
Again, it's not a light topic, so I want to try and get into it with you.
Yes.
We're going to just scrape the surface.
Sorry.
About the Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Now, I know every interview you do, or a lot of them, they kind of hold you as like the voice for urban culture and black youth in the UK.
Which is a problem. I'm not the voice. I'm the voice for me.
Yeah.
I happen to have done a bit of research and know a bit about the subject. But one of the big problems with social movements, and even with the way we're taught history, is this individualistic... I am the product of a community education program. I didn't learn all this shit by myself. I went to a Pan-African Saturday school where working class African Caribbean people who didn't have money gave up their weekends, weekend in, weekend out, to educate people like me, to make sure I would stay in school, to teach me black history, to teach me some sense of self. I'm just one manifestation of that community sense. So when people look at me or hear me speak, they shouldn't think, oh, rah, my man. So they should think, rah, what about all them school teachers and his mum and all the people that took time? So
everyone that's contributed to it
could be in a situation he's in. There's loads of other people that could be speaking to you. It just so happens I'm a musician and therefore people listen to me. But go on, sorry, what was the question?
So what I was going to ask you is, what's your opinion on the protests for Black Lives Matter in the UK? Do you think it's pointless protesting?
No, I don't think protesting is ever pointless. I think one of the things people have said is, I don't think they're just protesting what happens in America. Police kill people too here. Just because they kill people less frequently doesn't mean it's not an issue. There have been several cases of unlawful killing verdicts. So where an inquest jury has concluded that the police have killed someone and the IPCC have still chosen not to prosecute
Not to prosecute them, yeah.
So that's a problem. Even if Britain was a paradise, the idea of internationalist solidarity is a very good principle. When apartheid was happening in South Africa, formal apartheid, it didn't end just because of what black South Africans did. It ended because the entire world said, this is wrong. This is fucked up. We should at least let our governments know we think this is fucked up. When slavery ended, partly it was because of the rebellions that occurred directly in the Caribbean. But people around the world was like, this is messed up. Human beings are being bought and sold like they're a guitar. This is wrong. So to me, even if we were just so enraged by what was happening in America, where we've seen 12-year-old kids get shot on camera, where we've seen elderly people get shot on camera, where we've seen unarmed people with their head down, handcuffed, being shot on camera, where we've seen a dude get choked to death for selling cigarettes. This is not 1742. The death penalty, to me, is problematic in and of itself. But when men are getting choked to death for selling CDs or selling cigarettes, or a 12-year-old boy playing with a gun in a park, a pellet gun, in a state of America where it is legal to carry an AK-47, that alone is a valid protest. I can't speak for Black Lives Matter and I can't endorse or criticise all of their techniques or where they choose to stage all of the protests. I just think in general, we are very sensitive about social unrest when actually we should be supportive as a society of, when we look at a lot of these people are students. So we're talking about people who actually relatively, even if they're black, they're privileged. These are university students, most of them.
Right, yeah.
Educated people who could just keep quiet, have a perfectly good career, become lawyers and get on with it. To me, whether it's miners, whether it's people striking about the NHS, whether it's rail workers, people protesting injustice in a supposedly democratic society, even if you disagree with what they're protesting about, you should say, that's what democracy is supposed to be about. People getting out there and saying, I don't think this is fucking correct. I'm going to try and do something about it peacefully. If you shut down the avenues to peacefully protest injustice, you open up the reality that you're showing people that violence is the only answer. So to me, I think that there's been a lot of demonization of Black Lives Matter in America. We've had a few leaders even be killed. Darren Seals in Ferguson was killed last week. It looks like 5 or 6 other prominent leaders, not necessarily of the Black Lives Matter mainstream movement, but Black American youth leaders about that sense of injustice have been murdered. We know there's a long history of that. It's also because of what struggles for racial justice tell the whole world. For racism to function, it's not only black people that have to be lied to, white people have to be lied to. So in America, there's a whole history of race that is deliberately hidden and obscured. Even in Britain, we're taught, oh, Britain was the first country to abolish slavery. This is not true. Haiti was the first country to abolish slavery, the first major slaveholding power. So I don't want to waffle on too much, but I think that the danger of a black-led radical youth movement is that black culture has an influence on everybody, not just black kids. Reggae music influenced everybody. Reggae music was very dangerous because of that, because you now had kids of all backgrounds, even middle-class kids, white kids, Chinese kids, Indian, saying, I understand what Bob Marley's saying. He's singing about love and justice and peace and end to colonialism and all these different things. And it's the influence that culture can have over the entire world that makes it very, very dangerous. But I certainly support the principle in general of peaceful protest, of interrupting the flow of capital, of generally calling society's attention to injustice. If sometimes that's in a way that's inconvenient, oh bloody well. That's my opinion on the matter.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Thank you very much, brother.
It's DJ Double here with someone I highly respect even more so now. That was that's incredible, bro. Akala.
Big up. Yes, man.
Thank you, bro.
Yes, brother. Big up.
But I opened up a fortune cookie, and in that fortune cookie it said, be firm in your decisions, but lenient in your approach.
Are we talking metaphorically here, or did you really actually open?
Goats, but the goat of goats, Dr. Dre. Purely because he's done more. Like, no disrespect to Premier, but in terms of from like early 80s.
DJDUBL.